if you don't mind giving us a little bit of an idea of what this scholarship is.
For sure. Again, it's a free program, but we're hoping, maybe in the future we'll have corporate partners that want to partner with us in this. But we just want to say, hey, follow the steps. We have uh, episode or worksheets that go along with every episode. We want to see people grow and we want to see people do well. And if there's some incentives there that we can provide, definitely we will. Like we talk about Mexico and US. Even if you're in Mexico, you could be working in the USA. Offshore jobs are already existing in Latin America, regardless of where they are, and they've figured out how to do it remotely. All these opportunities exist. So understanding that there's a global community that we can build. And so we want to have people join us in that mission and say, hey, let's all get on board. We need employers to get on board. We need the students to start opening up and saying, hey, we're willing to learn and we're willing to serve in order to grow and build these win-win partnerships.
Business Money Podcast. Business Money Podcast Fearless. Business Money Podcast Fearless. Business Money Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Money Podcast, where intelligent financing meets strategic thinking. Today, we have a special podcast for you. We're going to touch bases on a couple of things that are very needed for young, inspired entrepreneurs and for them to be able to achieve financial freedom. We're going to talk about how to create financial freedom. Today, my guest is Daman Grewal from logisticsales.com. Daman, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Andreas. Thank you for having me and glad to be here.
I am very excited to talk to you because you mentioned that there was a couple of things that you really is your mission and your purpose and that you want to fulfill with logisticsales.com. So I want to give a brief bio so people understand who you are, in case that they are maybe under a rock and they haven't heard of you. Daman Grewal is one of the founders of logisticsales.com. That's logistics plural sales.com, a global free educational platform that focuses on teaching practical real world skills in business, entrepreneurship, sales, communication, and job searching, just to name a few. And your mission is simple, to help institutions and learners around the world access hands-on knowledge and industry insights at no cost. They're talking about making high-quality practical education accessible to everyone. Well, and I think that is exactly what we need right now, to be able to inspire the new generation, the younger generation. And of course, like even if you are already employed or, and you want to start your basically your own business, I think that you need these tools that Daman is going to talk to us about. So tell me a little bit about why is this mission so important to you and how this came about. Tell us a little bit about that in your background.
Well, Andres, I kind of picked up on something that you had said earlier, which was how do we encourage our youth to get involved into entrepreneurship opportunities, into high wage type of jobs where they can really succeed and see themselves really do well. So I know that's a pillar inside of you as well, where I've heard you mention this a few times. And that's exactly one of the reasons why we created this is because so many people are looking for that mentorship, are looking for that someone that they can trust to really take their kids to that next level, right? And it's that same desire from within where we say, hey, you know what? If we did it the hard way, why don't we just teach someone how to do it the easier way? And, if we went through the struggles, why don't we just help somebody get there without going through as many struggles as we had to growing up? So I've had so many parents that have come and said, hey, can you train my son? Can you train my kid? And you get so many of these requests all the time. And then so we started doing that even through the different workplaces that I was at. And, we were just doing it locally first. And then when we were doing it locally, and sometimes so my background is in transportation logistics and we have a few different companies in that field. And so whenever we would put out job advertisements, we would notice, okay, there was applicants that would apply locally, but then there was a spam filter that caught everybody that was international. And so these spam filters, when we went through it one day, we said, wow, there's like hundreds and thousands of applicants that had been applying for years and years that we never really took a chance on or never even noticed that they were even applying. And when we actually took a look at it, it was so many applicants from around like 65 different countries around the world. And so we realized that there's a lot of demand for people around the world that want to work in North America. And so we said, okay, well, how do we teach people some of these skills or how do we give people some of these opportunities? So we try to do a lot of it privately for a while, for a couple years. But then we realized that the demand was so high, and that's why we kind of created this course so we could teach people, okay, here's some key ways that everyone can be involved here. How students can get paired up with entrepreneurs and start building the skill sets to be able to help each other out in a way where both of them can succeed together. And so we couldn't really employ all of them, but we had, we tried as many as possible. But again, there's only a certain cap that sometimes we could have on ourselves, and we sometimes need help from outside. And so when we saw that the demand was there, and I noticed that these things would repeat, where everybody wanted to say, okay, how can we help each other out? And so we said, okay, well, something I always wanted as a child too was someone to mentor me and show me the ropes and hopefully guide me through that journey where I could figure out how to earn that income and how to create value for myself where I can actually have a financial future that looked amazing. So, again, I was lucky enough to achieve mine at a very young age, but then it was about, okay, I needed a mentor to help me get to the next steps. And I didn't realize that there was more steps along the way. So there's a lot of things we don't know. So again, if there's a way or a platform where we can educate our youth, we could educate anybody, including people that have been in the industry for years and years, including people that are in senior citizen age that can still have a contribution in society, but they sometimes just don't know how or who do I approach. And so it's for all ages. Again, we do take the youth in that first category and say, you know what, yeah, you know what, everyone else already kind of had their turn. Let's focus on these guys. But for us, it's all inclusive. It's saying, hey, at any age, people do have 2 to 3 major career changes in their lifetime. So when we see stats like that, we say, hey, any time is a good time. And then when we see success stories of people in their late ages, there's that KFC story about the colonel getting successful way later in his career, I think past 60 years old. But then there's guys like Warren Buffett, which are huge mentors for so many people. And we say, you know what, hey, you know, what would we give to be around him? Right? To just be like, "Hey, can we just soak a little bit of Warren in?" And so, there's so much that people have to offer and just saying, "Hey, if we could just mesh these together." And that's the thing too. And I know you have that desire to help the younger people too. And for us, it's like it's a combination of saying, "Hey, if we could just figure out how to help each other, like we're gonna feel good. All of us are gonna feel good. We may have fun doing it, and then at the same time, we could all be winning together too." Instead of just leaving it all to just the large corporation guy that's figured everything out. And is it better for the rich to get richer, or do we bring everybody up to join the party here, right? And so that's the thing too is I want to bring everybody up to say, hey, you know what, it's the mountaintop is a fun place to be, and if we could show you the roadmap on how to get there, then we could all celebrate there together.
That's a beautiful analogy right there. The road, like the mountaintop is a great place to be. So we just need to show you what the road is to get there. Now, I think that the road is paved by competence. Competence comes from confidence. But how do you get confident when you're young? That's why I want to dive into your background. And I think, Damon, it's very interesting that you mentioned logistics. And I want to ask you about basically your transition about in logistics. Why is logistics basically one of the things that you're very confident about and that you want to kind of like basically inspire and teach young entrepreneurs to get confident?
So logistics is just because that's our background. So I spent so many years since 1997. I've been in the logistics field, and yeah. So I mean, and my partners that are in the program with me, they're all background as well as a lot of it's logistics based, transportation based. And so again, we're a little bit more have a little bit more expertise in that area. But again, we teach it in a general format. We're teaching general business practices, how to be ethical, how to do it the right way. And that's another reason why we kind of created this is because so many people are having like whether it's mental health challenges because of how they may be facing different stress at work. And there's like a stat that comes out that says, 1 in 8 people, have a mental health issue at work somehow related to the stresses that they're feeling at their job places. And so we say, okay, well, how many people are in that mindset of the Wolf of Wall Street mentality where it's like, go, 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 go. And they have the wrong motivation to really get successful. And then when they do it that way, where it's just about, hey, what can I get? Then we see them crash and burn. And so, or even when it's about different people running different businesses, and if your strategy in business is, hey, you know what, I'm working at a place, how can I steal all these customers and go to the next place? Is that really ethical? Right? Is that what we want to be teaching people? And so we've seen a lot of that in the type of business that we're in. So it was all about how do we put good principles out there and show people that these good principles work and that they're tried, tested, and true. But then also, if it's with an alignment of you, you're going to be a lot more successful in life. And you're also going to feel good about what you do. And so that's important for us too, is not to allow people to get on these weird pathways, which are going to end in devastation. But how do we help guide you and really nurture you in a caring way and a loving way, where again, we'll show you how to do it the right way. I'm kind of one of those examples of someone that's done it the right way or done it by the book every single time. And we were able to reach, whether it's Profit 500, Growth 500, and get into, again, anything where we sent our mind to, we were able to do and to get into any of those situations that we've always wanted to get into. But there's multiple ways to achieve the same outcome. And that's something that we want to teach people, that you don't have to do it one way, that there's several ways to achieve a similar outcome. So even when we talk about the mountaintop, there's not just one pathway to get there. And we want people to realize that there's hundreds of pathways to get up to a mountaintop. And we just want you to choose the one that's going to align with you so that you can make the right choices in life and feel good about them. And choices where, again, your parents are going to be proud of you, right? Your siblings or anybody, your peer group is going to be proud of you. And do it in a way where you can feel good and contribute to society. And that's what we want people to do. Again, I know internally, Andreas, when you talk about, I want to see these young guys succeed. Why? Because we want them to see it the right way. We want to steer them away from those pathways where they're going to get hurt. And I'm a father, so I have two children, and obviously we don't want to see our children get hurt. So we want to teach them in a way that's going to be genuine and say, hey, it's not about just what's in it for you, but let's think about what we can do for society. And when we think about society and we're facing outward, again, there's so many examples of this, but when we're facing outward, we're actually helping everybody along the way and we're achieving what we want to achieve because we've learned that, that's one of the secrets of getting successful is how many people can we help? And
Well,
again, yeah,
I'm
big
sorry.
mindset for entrepreneurship is that how many people can I help? How many people can I serve? And just learning that the more people that you can help and serve, the more you're probably going to make anyways.
Very good point, Damon, and I think it's very interesting. No, absolutely. When I mentioned, like I mean, your experience in logistics, to me, it is very interesting because I do believe that it's actually when we think about the world and everything that is happening, everything is so connected. To me, you mentioned, okay, if
Mhm.
there's a young man or young woman or even already, basically middle age or whatever stage you're in and you want to start and be an entrepreneur, I will do exactly the same analysis of the person if it was young or if it was older. I will do what is called a SWOT analysis. Why? Because I want to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the person. And then I want to base myself on their strengths and, of course, minimize their weaknesses by building up. That is one way to do it. Now, that's why I said, okay, sometimes, different, like you said, there's different ways to get there. There's different ways to get to the same success, but we need to understand what the weaknesses are of the person and the strengths. And hey, if you have wings, why not, get you flying there? If you have a good 4x4, vehicle, all right, well, you're going to be able to climb up without a problem. Now, okay, I do want to tie in a little bit, because we do want to discuss this, because to me, it's very interesting in your industry, what you do. All right. We saw on the news, and I want to share something, and I want to ask you because you're an expert in that field, and we talk about supply chain. We talk a lot, like we have a lot of clients, between Central America, Mexico, and of course, Canada, and we're seeing right now one of the biggest, disruptions in supply chain all over the world, but also is the biggest opportunities for all the Western Hemisphere to really line up and work on. And we saw, and I want to share this with you real quick, so we can give context, to the audience.
Sure.
We're seeing right now one of the tweets from Craig Fuller with Fried Alley. He was talking about this is what early signs of manufacturing renaissance looks like. Flatbeds on fire, surging at all-time highs. So van and refried staying strong, but not seeing the same surge that we see in flatbeds. And he was discussing basically why flatbeds are sort of an economic indicator of how basically manufacturing and reshoring renaissance is happening. And I wanted to ask you if maybe that's what you agree or you do not agree with that statement. And what can you tell us about that?
One thing is that whenever I see flatbed industry, I see it as being a seasonal type of industry, more stronger in the summer months because we're into building, creating infrastructure. There's a lot of projects that are going on more in the summertime. So road construction is happening in the summertime versus winter time. So again, we do see a lot more activity happening this time of year, especially rolling into spring, going into summer. That's the busiest time you're going to see for flatbeds. And so again, what I'm interested in is seeing, okay, what did it look like before, in the winter months, and what's it going to look like in the future. So I'm kind of trying to gauge it in that perspective. So in general, there's been a capacity shortage happening for the last couple of years within the freight market. So we also are going to notice that, hey, there's going to be some capacity issues once the economies do decide to pick up and do decide to accelerate here. So I know the reefer and the van markets, they were up a couple months ago or just even a month ago, right? So again, only started to start coming down a tiny bit. But again, in certain areas, Texas right now is a hot market for refrigerated. Why is that? Because again, the Mexico side is producing a lot of fruits and vegetables right now that are coming up through Laredo, through McAllen, going into all parts in the US, and they're feeding everybody and even coming back into Canada. And so when we see, okay, well, which markets are hot right now, which ones aren't, some of it is seasonal demands and some of it is going to shift. So as we see California now getting into production, we're going to say, okay, well, a lot of that surge is going to start moving over towards California and or maybe Arizona. And so they were pretty hot just about a month ago, but I'm sure they're going to heat up again. A lot of the transition happens from the south and it starts going a little bit north. And so there's a lot of things that we got to take into consideration. Other thing is looking at and saying, okay, which industries right now are booming? What has the tariffs really disrupted? And which, again, data centers, if they're being built, a lot of infrastructure may be coming in. So again, if it's servers, you're going to be moving them on vans. If it's the infrastructure for building the framing out the buildings, now you're looking at flatbeds. So again, it's a what's moving, what's happening, what projects are in place, and how long is that project gonna be going on for, and which industries is it going to impact. And so supply chain is looking at it from a whole perspective and saying, okay, here, let's take a look at everything and say, okay, which areas are being segmented here as well. Sometimes one state is going to be busier than a different state, right? So we see, okay, well, it depends on different things. It's going to depend on your labor. It's going to depend on government. It's going to depend on the red tape that's there. It's going to depend on so many different factors. Cost of land, cost of operating, capital requirements. So again, it's looking at it in a vast way to say, okay, well, what could be driving that? So my question back would be, if we see that happening in flatbeds, okay, what could be spiking that right now, right? And which area? So when we look across the map, I also want to see which parts of the US are spiking in flatbed and which ones aren't. So I'm looking at geographically as well to map it out and say, okay, are we seeing this all over or is there certain areas? And sometimes even again with refrigerated or vans, we'll see them being busier in certain areas and certain areas having a little bit of a decline.
Very, very well put and very good point because, yes, actually, one of the reasons why to me it's very interesting the statistics on trucking and logistics. It's because to me, it is really an indicator of, okay, where are things moving and what's happening? You just mentioned transport. I mean, when we've seen investments and we go talk to basically, in the Mexican market, we go to Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey, and we talk a lot about, with the manufacturing corridors and of course in Mexico City, we have talked to a lot of the basically companies that are binational or that they have ties basically into the agreement that we have here with these three countries, which is Canada, United
Yeah.
States, and Mexico. And one of the things that we see right now is we've seen now the move from investments from Mexico, large companies coming and investing here, and it's bringing in a lot of manufacturing. And we talked to basically all the CNI that is basically before it was basically on the other side of the border, actually being here in the United States. It's all driven by the incentives that are given by the government in here in the United States. And of course, the well, it's, basically the nearest neighbors, like are really going to benefit, I believe, basically from the strength that we have right now when we are trying to differentiate supply chains. We've talked about this with some of our clients that, of course, like we have a big dependence, with Asia when it comes to a lot of manufacturing. But guess what? Now on the table, it is bringing in a lot of the manufacturing. Even I have Chinese clients right now that they were manufacturing in China, making their manufacturing here in the United States. So when I see all this movement and I see all of this movement of big, commodities, it's telling me that growth is coming because it is all driving basically infrastructural growth, manufacturing growth, CNI growth, energy growth. We discussed this actually with, with another basically, a person that has a mission, to be really impact a lot of the schooling and education for electrical contractors, which we need. The same as we need,
Yeah.
skill force in manufacturing for, or basically, for repair vehicles and things like that. So I wanted to ask you about your process and your mission with just with your website with saleslogistics.com. Can you please tell us how do you want basically anybody to understand what you guys are offering there, and tell us a little bit about your mission in there exactly?
Well, yeah, it's taking a look at what's happening around us. So the first thing that we're trying to create with logistics sales is just show you about how do you find opportunities. And for a lot of people, they want to have financial goals, they want to have financial success, but they're like, well, how do we find these opportunities and how are they open to us? And so a lot of people are having a difficult time trying to recognize which opportunities are actually even showing up. But then one thing that we can look at, and Andreas, I know you kind of work a lot with the US and you work a lot with Mexico. So I'll kind of talk about both of these. And so in the US, there's about 35 million small to medium sized businesses that exist right now in the US. And so when we say, okay, in the US, over 50% of these companies are not going to be around 5 years from now. And so that's where we say, okay, well, you know what? Here's a huge opportunity for people to be able to assist companies that already exist right now, currently. And then there's companies that are opening and closing every single year. So there's millions of companies that are closing down. If you think about it, right? 35 million, divide that
Yes.
within 5 years, and you say, okay, well, hey, there's a couple million companies that are opening and closing. In Mexico, the rates of closure are even higher, where they're saying it's about 70%. And there's some stats that even say it's 70% within 2 years of companies are going under. But then also these small to medium sized companies are accounting for like 99% of the private sector jobs. And we're saying, well, hey, there's a lot of importance here for small to medium sized entrepreneurs to establish themselves and to really support our economies. But the question we have to ask is, well, what are we doing as whether it's a government or as an authority to be able to help and assist all these type of companies that are going under? And we have to ask that question, like, why are they going under? Right. And typically, and maybe Andreas, I'm gonna maybe put you on the spot here to help answer some of these because you're helping these companies with capital. And when it comes to helping companies with capital, you're probably seeing a lot of the internal struggles that they're facing. And maybe I'll leave it with you for a minute to talk about what are those struggles that they're facing, and then we'll talk about the opportunity in those.
Well, very interesting because I think that, yes, absolutely. We reviewed thousands of financial statements and tax returns. And what the biggest problem that we find really is inefficiencies in all the fiscal, operational, and financial the businesses. That's why, to me, really understanding how a business works is very important and who's leading it. And then what I just said earlier, do a SWOT analysis of that person that is leading that company. Because maybe we're not making the right decisions or to fill up gaps in knowledge in technology, especially in technology right now. I mean, I'm explaining, like we basically, we acquire companies as well, and we look at different businesses that we know we can add value because it integrates horizontally or vertically into basically, what we have. Maybe they need a boost on capital, technology, you name it. But one of the biggest things that I see is a lot of founders really, they have been able to accomplish a lot without the knowledge and skills and tools that we know that they're out there. And then they get to a point of choking, they get to a choking point where they're not able to expand. And that's why, like, I mean, one of the missions, and since you put me on the spot, I'm going to say a little bit about what I do. Okay. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm the vice president of the biggest Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Spanish here in Houston, actually Cámara de Empresarios Latinos de Houston. I'm going to say it in Spanish because that's the way the name is, CELH. But guess what? We're very active, we're very vocal to understand, okay, what is really what's needed for the population to understand what are the tools there for fiscal, capital, and operational, and even, trainings and teachings. And of course, organizations like yours that you're trying to also help incubate what is going to become now basically the renaissance of a lot of the strength of America that I believe in, because I do believe in that. Now, that's one thing. But also, when we're doing the analysis, I'm the president of the Latino Franchise Council. The I'm basically, we have this podcast. I'm a speaker at the Great American Franchise Expo. I'm a consultant with the FCC, the Franchise Consulting Company. We travel
Mm.
all over the country, meeting people that want to become business owners, but they don't know how. Because again, I look at everything as statistics. 30% of the population is coachable and capable to become business owners. The other 70%, they are the ones that are going to come and support those founders, those entrepreneurs, and maybe those business owners. And then we have people that don't know how to start a business from the beginning. That's why I believe in franchising, because to me, franchising is a replicable model that is basically done with everything from A to C for you. If you have a skill in particular, if you're a people person, then you're going to like this type of industry. If you have a skill or a knowledge, because of your background in a certain industry, you're going to like some business models better than others because you have an empathy for what that industry is. If we continue to fulfill our mission with all of the tools, with all of the community, and with all of the organizations like your organization, we're going to be able to impact the world and actually create the biggest wave of entrepreneurs that we're going to have in the coming years, which that's what I believe in. And I don't know if, Damon, that answers your question, but I wanted to at least give you a broad perspective.
For sure, yeah. So when I'm listening to that, what I'm seeing is there's a couple key issues here,
Hmm.
and definitely like the whole thing is how do we sustain entrepreneurship when we see so many people going out of business? How do we help sustain it? And so what I'm seeing is when I'm listening to you, I'm listening to and hearing that a lot of business entrepreneurs, one is they just don't know the proper numbers and they're struggling with the numbers. Secondly, when there's too much on their plate, they're wearing you can't wear too many caps. And so they're struggling with saying, okay, well, how do I hit this plateau? But that's me doing most of the work, most of the push, right? And again, we call this like the law of the lid. John Maxwell teaches us. And so the law of the lid means you can only go to as far as the lid of the owner of the company. So whoever's running that company, again, whatever their capability, whatever their capacity is what the limit of that business is going to be until you find someone else to increase it. And so how do you do that? It's about this is where the opportunity lies. And this is what we try to teach is that if you have one of these skills, whether you're good at numbers, whether you understand technology, whether you understand economics, whether you have realized what the newest trend is, maybe that's happening in the industry, or you find a different way, different solution on how to do something a little bit better. Again, it's about bringing any sort of skill set into a company and then learning how to monetize it. And so that's what we're trying to teach and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this guy's struggling because he's by himself and he thinks he has to do it all by himself. But then when they don't realize that there's actually people, again, capital capital involvement is another component of that business. The other partners that you choose are a part of that business, but you can also partner people into your business as well and say, okay, well, if I think I have to do this alone, that's the first cap that you're putting on yourself. And not realizing that there's access to amazing people. And human capital is one of the biggest places where we can make investment. And human capital, once we realize what that true value is truly one of those things that could really elevate any business. Any business is not going to survive without human capital inside that business. Unless you're totally digital, runs without like all machines and AI or something, right? But again, what's that value on human capital? And how come we're not recognizing that and saying, hey, you know what? And people need to recognize that, right? Where's the value in any business? It's usually within the person, especially a small business. A small business can't really sell to a larger business unless it has it, invested in that human capital. And there's people in that business that could run without the owner being there. And so that's the thing that people need to realize that, hey, when I bring people into my business and provide these opportunities, and maybe I need to provide better opportunities than the ones I've been currently providing, Or again, maybe I haven't been thinking, expanding my mindset to think about what opportunities I can actually provide and how I can do it strategically where I don't have to, pay an arm and a leg to be able to get that. And a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes think, how do I pay somebody at the $100,000 salary when I'm barely making it myself? There's ways to subcontract some of that work out to say, okay, I don't want to give up ownership in my business, but I still need this help in this area or this area. Maybe I can start posing opportunities. Like, again, can I offer sales positions? Can I offer accounting positions where someone can come in and people will come into a business and say, hey, I'll save you X amount of dollars. I'll take 10% of whatever I save you. Or they'll create, some sort of strategic formula that's going to work for you where you make money as a business owner. And also the business that's being created on the side here will also be able to make money as well. So there's so many ways to do that. Like, finance is a great one too. When you are giving financing to a company, you're not charging that company anything to get the financing. You're typically getting that money from the bank, the people that have the money, right? Whether it's the government that's providing that money or the bank that's providing that money or the lender. So there's somebody else that can pay for you to be able to grow. And when there's so many different ways that we can structure that, and that's what I want people to realize is that hey, every skill that you have, even if it's just simple customer service, like customer service is a skill that can be monetized because customer service is sales. And if you know how to take a picture on your phone, that's sales. If you've ever posted something on social media, that's sales. And all these things can drive revenue for an entrepreneur. Even when it comes to dealing with Mexico and Canada, having the English language as a skill or being able to speak Spanish as a skill can be monetized because, again, if one person is struggling with one language or another and you're the bridge between both, then that's a skill set that can be of value that you can offer people to help them grow and to help them access, the North American marketplace. Because again, the biggest fear of someone not working with somebody in Mexico is maybe the language barrier, is the trust factor. But if you can solve some of those issues and solve some of those connection issues, then you'll be able to find the right partners to be able to partner with. And again, there's value in that, value in creating, value in the things that you already know. And simple as a language skill that maybe you grew up with as a kid and you're like, wow, I never knew I could actually monetize this. I thought, it was a hindrance, but it could be actually something that can make me money in the future, right? Which you've already done, Andreas.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But yes, actually, absolutely. One of the things I mentioned, like every time we're evaluating any business and we're evaluating the owner or the president of the company and everything, we look at them because all of us, even you, Damon, or me, or anybody that is listening to us, we function on three, call it, universes, as we are basically leading a company. So we are sales, skill producer, we are artists, where we're trying to create basically, the sales and things like that. Then we get to our managerial side. We get to our leadership, implementation, making sure that the processes, the procedures that we put in place are working, or we are basically in that creator, visionary, connector mode where we're trying to tie in. And some owners, some business owners, or, actually a lot of business owners stay in only one lane. We have to learn to pivot from one to the other. If a lot of things are basically pulling us out, the sales are basically bombarded and we need to bring in more people to support that. We need to be able to do that because, as we know, and as I've heard, from several people, sales cures all, I guess, to a point. That's where I would say it because I've seen companies actually make less revenue by making more sales. And it's interesting, basically, when we look at it. The second thing is when we're evaluating a company is usually on 5 stages: on startup, early stage, mid stage, mature, where it's actually get to kind of graduation, you get your, MBA, and then acquire or merge. And most companies stay on the 2 or 3 stage. They don't get to the 4 or 5. And in order for you to do that, you as the owner need to be able to remove yourself from the business because it's actually a whole operation that works with or without you. And you have the people in place making accountability, and then you have the processes, procedures, IP, property, technology, and all of the things that we're discussing, there. That's why a lot of people, sometimes miss the opportunity to be able to get acquire or merge either by selling to somebody else, because you're retiring, or, maybe a private equity company wants to bring them in, or Like a lot of the clients that I work with, that no, I want to continue the business, but I can't really work with my own capital or with bank's capital. Let's go and franchise it. Let's go and expand it to other markets with a good business model. We got that supply chain already tied in. We got our white labels. We got everything going on, and we can continue to expand. That is one of the ways basically to tie it all in, like in this conversation. But Damon, let's bring it all back, because I think we, we definitely went out there and we went into the universe, like discussing a lot of things. Bring us all back and tell me, what do you want people to remember from this podcast about your mission, what you do, and how we can direct people to go into your website to get more acquainted with you? Tell us that.
Sure. Yeah. Our main mission is just to show people that anyone can have financial freedom, regardless of where you live, what your background is, what your financial status is. But to understand that financial freedom is available for everybody. And what we're trying to do, and you kind of alluded to this as well, like why are franchises so successful most of the time? It's because they already have a structure in place, foundational education system and already in place to be able to show people how to get to, how to become profitable. And essentially, what we're doing too is we're just trying to provide you with a foundation, the right foundation that's full of education that's going to be able to allow you to see the opportunities that are around you. And so that's something that we want people to recognize, that these opportunities exist everywhere. And one of the first exercises that we try to teach people is about just expanding on Google Maps and seeing what's around in my neighborhood. And you're going to realize how many small businesses are probably right in your own neighborhood that you haven't ever looked into. And just opening up and saying, okay, can I have a conversation with somebody? So just those small steps, like the very easy steps that you can do. And I know you kind of go into trade shows and invite people into that type of atmosphere as well. That's a great place to learn. Great place to see like what resonates with my skill sets, what resonates with what feels right to me. Right. So not what someone else is trying to push you into, but to see, okay, well, hey, if I could do the self-evaluation, this is what our program also focuses on, is the self-evaluation, how you talked about the SWOT analysis. So we actually do that. We get you to do that to yourself and say, okay, what are my strong skills? What can I align with? What aligns with me? So again, we're trying to get you to listen into the conversations. We have free weekly episodes that we put out, and it's just for that purpose, just to expand your mindset. The more that your mind is going to expand, the more opportunities are going to be able to come in, because now you're starting to be open to it. And again, Andreas mentioned this as well. 30% of owners aren't willing to, expand their mindset. They're not willing to look outside and make any pivot because their mind is just not capable of thinking that far. And even when it comes to, we kind of mentioned this other example about the sales, and too much sales sometimes cannot be a great thing either. But when we look at it, we have to ask ourselves the question of why, right? And we see this in financial balance sheets. If we look at the stock market, where again, if you want to learn about this, there's those financial balance sheets are out there for anyone to look at. Those income statements, anything. But what you're going to see is companies will make investments, and as they're growing, they're making investments into people, into expanding into new industries, and a lot of capital is going into there, but they see a long-term return. And so we're trying to teach people about the long term and saying, hey, you know what? You may face pain now, but if you could think long term and understand that every time we go through pain, there's something that's in there for us long term, whether it's the skill sets that we build, whether it's the opportunity that we're trying to create in the future, right? Again, why are people investing into AI? Very expensive to start investing into AI. Most of these companies are probably running at a loss, but why are they doing it, right? So again, sales doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make money, but there's a future outcome that you're going towards. And that's important to think about, is what is that future outcome? Is that financial freedom for you? And what pain am I willing to go through to get there? And so what we're trying to do in our program is kind of show you the good, bad, everything, and let you make a decision that's right for you. Like sometimes going the employee route is the best route. Sometimes going to entrepreneurship is a good route, but what's good for one person may not be good for one person, right? It's giving you the option of saying, hey, you know what we want you to know is that, again, it's financial freedom is a choice, and you having a choice in your life and learning that it's always in your hands, not in that someone else's hands. It's not in my hands. It's not in Andrea's hands that you get successful or not. It's not in the government's hands. It's not in your teacher's hands. It's not in your employer's hands. It's up to you, right? So we show you that, hey, there's so many choices that you have in life. If we make the right ones, or if we're willing to take a little bit of risk, There's rewards that can come out of it. And we're just going to show you that these opportunities are all around you. And that's essentially, we just want to give you that hope and say, we'll give you that little encouragement to take those small steps. Nothing crazy, nothing big, only what you're comfortable with. And we'll give you so many different strategies that you can use and try to implement just to show yourself just that little bit of proof that you can do it. And what we, again, I've been teaching sales for over 20 years, entrepreneurship, sales, similar kind of ballpark. And the only thing that I've been teaching in those sessions is just pretty much taking people's blocks away because everyone naturally has skills. Everyone can naturally has some sort of talent that can be monetized and can be, sold at a higher level. Not really sold, but maybe there's a better term for that. But I'll give you an example of this, right? Like,
It is.
I saw this online, but they talk about the water ball. The one water ball when it sits in the dollar store, for example, or in the grocery chain, it's like 50 cents. But then, the same thing you have at the gym and it's selling for like $2, $3. And the same ball of water you could sell in an airplane for $6, right? So, the value of it goes up. It's the same water ball, right? So that's the same thing as when we talk about human beings and human capital. Like you're still the same person, but just realizing that if you put yourself in the right position, and that's what we're trying to do is that opportunity is that position. And if you put yourself in that right position, you can become more valuable if you're willing to learn and grow, right? So to say, okay, well, how's it, if it's that water ball, well, how do I get into this place? How do I get into the gym facility or the rec center where I can get more value? So we'll teach you how to have that conversation. But if it's like, okay, now I need to get to the airport or need to get into the airline, well, hey, you're gonna have to learn how to have a better conversation there to get up to that level and to be able to pitch that value statement for yourself. So we want to teach you some of those skill sets where you can have those conversations, but it's also in a way where you can say, okay, well, this is the value that I bring to this area or to whatever somebody, right? To an employer, to a business, a corporation, or to customers. What value can I bring you? And if you do it from an outward perspective of looking at that person first, understanding what they're going through, providing a solution for that, then you're going to be successful, right? So we want to teach you some of those skills. Again, we want to break it in small steps so it's easy to digest and just give you that foundation. And then go to the people that are experts. You can go to the coaches afterwards as soon as you find those opportunities, but we want to help you with that first step.
That's beautiful, Damon. So I want to share actually something very interesting in your website that I wanted to show if you allow me to.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
the scholarship, tab that you have. And please, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it right here on the screen so we can take a look at it and explain a little bit about the scholarship. If you don't mind giving us a little bit of an idea of what this scholarship is.
For sure. I mean, smaller scholarships that we just kind of put out ourselves. Again, it's a free program, but we're hoping, maybe in the future we'll have corporate partners that want to partner with us in this. But we just want to say, hey, follow the steps. We have uh, episode or worksheets that go along with every episode. So we're trying to get you to do the work. But if you are putting together the work and you submit it to us, then you could apply for some of these scholarships, which again, we just want to help you out with your education, maybe help you just invest in something that could get you to that next step. But yeah, we want to see people grow and we want to see people do well. And if there's some incentives there that we can provide, definitely we will. And we want to see people, again, achieve those levels, give it their all. And just know that, again, we're genuinely there to try to help you succeed to those next levels. And sometimes, that little bit of financial support can help. Just knowing that someone's there to encourage you and to be willing to invest into you, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's we want to be able to show that love. We want to show that, hey, we actually care about your future. Any which way that we can do that, if we can, share and help build communities, that's something that we all are always going to work towards, and definitely want to, lead as we also want to lead by example too, and just say, hey, if we're putting out this type of program, free education, we actually want to, hopefully partner with larger educational institutions where we could provide this structure and provide this framework to them for to have facilitators provide this in the future to other people, but also to get people also to say, okay, what can I do to help, the youth in our community or youth globally? And when we talk about logistics, like we are heading into a global community. When we see the supply chain shifting the way that they are right now, it's realizing how close everything really is and how those partnerships are being affected all around the world, not only within the place that I live, but we're also expanding that mindset to say, hey, you know what? Even if you're living in, like we talk about Mexico and US, even if you're in Mexico, you could be working in the USA. Offshore jobs are already existing in Latin America, right? anywhere around the world. Like people are working all around the world, regardless of where they are, and they've figured out how to do it remotely. So again, all these opportunities exist. It's not only where you live, but it's also again all over the globe. So understanding that there's a global community that we could build from this, and we could pull people up together. So we want to have people join us in that mission and say, hey, let's all get on board. We need employers to get on board. We need the students to start opening up and saying, hey, we're willing to learn and we're willing to serve in order to grow and building build these win-win partnerships.
That's a beautiful thing. We actually, yes, actually, with the organizations that we have with the CELH here, we also have scholarships, small
Nice.
scholarships that are funded by banks, and other partners that are wanting to give to aspiring or current entrepreneurs if they do the work, if they do the classes, if they complete the educations, if they really invest. So they got to do their work, they got to do their part, and they got to, of course, excel against the other people. And of course, we want to give you basically that leg up, so you can continue to serve your mission. The same as probably they did with Damon, the same that's done with me. I'm very excited about that. All right. Well, Damon, so let's close it up. We're coming to the, top of the hour. And tell us a little bit about where people can find you, or like your website, maybe your media. You mentioned, maybe you have YouTube. Tell us
Yeah.
about Instagram, or what places can we find you, phone numbers, things like that.
For sure, yeah. If you go to the main website, logisticssales.com, and you scroll to the bottom of the page, you can see all our social media handles. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. I think that's pretty much all of them. But take a look on the bottom of the page and you'll find us on there.
Damon, thank you so much. I really appreciate, you sharing this time with us and telling us your mission and what you guys are trying to accomplish. We really appreciate, businesses like you and organizations like you that are trying to make an impact. And I believe in that. I believe that that's what you got to build. You got to build brotherhoods and sisterhoods and communities with people that are trying to make an impact like you. I'm really excited about talking to you in the future. And of course, if you're listening to us and you want to know more, feel free to go to logisticssales.com and go talk to Damon. And of course, we're going to see you in the next podcast.
All right. Thank you.